Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever time you're joining me. That's the kind of cool part about this, right? You can watch this at any time. This is Mr. Kenton. This is going to be our first video as it pertains to physical science. And we're going to be beginning by looking at chemistry, and we're going to be specifically looking at matter and properties. Now, as you go through and watch this video, I do ask that you have open this PowerPoint. You can find my PowerPoint on Google Classroom. It's under the Matter and Properties unit heading within classwork. Go ahead and have that open. And while you're listening to this video, watch through the PowerPoint, watch through the video, and take notes while you're watching it, okay? So that you can really kind of dive in, get the things that I'm going to be adding to the video so that you can come prepared with questions when you come to class. Okay, now as you're watching it, feel free to pause the video if you need to. Feel free to um, you know watch it multiple times. Whatever you're going to do to help you learn the material, feel free to do that here. And so I'm excited to present this to you guys, to give you this information, and let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing that you'll notice here is the North Carolina standard that we're going to be covering with this particular topic. It's 2.1, which is understanding types, properties, and structure of matter. Now, as we're going through this particular unit, these are the skills that you guys should acquire as we go through this particular unit. And so, as you look back, as we're beginning, always come back to these three skills and ask yourself, am I learning or do I understand how to do this task? If the question is no, then you're going to want to revisit the videos that cover those particular tasks. Now, as we look at this, 2.1 can be broken down into three tasks. The first is classifying matter as homogeneous or heterogeneous, as either a pure substance or a mixture, breaking that down further, elements or compounds, and then solutions, colloids, or suspensions, breaking that down even further. We're going to take a look at each of these individually, so if you're lost and confused already, that's okay. I'm going to help get you up to speed. The second task is being able to explain the phases of matter and the physical changes that matter undergoes. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to need to be able to compare physical and chemical properties of various types of matter. So with that, let's go ahead and move forward, and we're going to start by looking at that first particular bullet. That's where we're going to be starting today. Now, as we start there, we need to first go ahead and define what is chemistry. Now, chemistry is a component of physical science, and for our intents and purposes, we're going to define chemistry as the study of matter and the changes that matter can undergo. Now, as I've been saying this, you've seen the word matter kind of a couple times in that statement. You might be wondering, Mr. Kenton, I don't know what matter is. What is that? And so matter can be defined as any object that has mass and has volume. Now, I want you to think of mass. This is referring to how much of the object that we have. So, for example, when you put an object on a scale, you can measure its mass. That's that component that we're looking at. And its volume. And so volume is a way for us to measure how much space an object will take up. So, for example, you think about volume, for example, a water bottle or a soda bottle. Like if you go to the grocery store and you buy a 2-liter of soda, like Dr. Pepper, that's the volume of soda that you have. Another example could be maybe with milk. You could go buy a gallon of milk. That's the volume of milk that you have. Now, as we begin to look at matter, we want to understand that yes, it's an object that has mass and volume, But matter can be subdivided, can be broken down into different categories. And so it's going to be our task to unpack and examine what those categories are. And the really neat thing about matter, everything that we interact with, everything that we see and we observe, it's made up of matter. And matter undergoes certain types of changes. Sometimes those changes are physical in nature, so the substance still remains the same. And sometimes they can be chemical in nature, where the substance gets transformed into a new substance. And so that's our introduction to what chemistry is. Now let's start to take a deeper dive into matter. Specifically, what are these subdivisions? What are these different categories, these different types of matter that we can interact with? Now, on this particular slide, I've included some pretty interesting images, because what I want you to kind of see here is we can have things that are gases, like in this gas tube right here. We can have water, and the really neat thing about this image is it's showing water in terms of the shape of its particles, but we've got it in its liquid phase. We've got a metal that's here in this dish, so that's a solid. And then we've got some examples of some mixtures that are over here. We've got a salad, and then we've got this blue liquid solution that's in this beaker. Now, each of these images are representing different types of matter. And so when we start to classify matter, the first breakdown or subcategory we can come up with is this idea of homogeneous or heterogeneous. Now, when you start breaking down words, the prefix in front of each of those words, you've got homo in front of homogeneous, and we've got hetero in front of heterogeneous. Well, that prefix homo means that it looks uniform or similar, right? And so when we talk about something that's homogeneous, we would say that the sample, or whatever it is that we're looking at, is uniform throughout. So it visibly does not look different. And so some examples of matter that's going to be homogeneous would be elements, compounds, and solutions. Those are different types of matter that are going to be homogeneous. Now, I'm going to be giving more specific examples of each of these later on, so if you're still a little confused about homogeneous and heterogeneous, just hang in there. I'm going to get there. Now, heterogeneous, we've got that prefix hetero, so going right through here, hetero, that's telling us that there's going to be differences, right? And so when we say heterogeneous, what we're saying is the sample, or whatever it is that we're looking at, it's observed and it's visibly different throughout. If you think back to the previous slide, there was that example of the salad, right? The salad was heterogeneous. It had the lettuce, had the croutons, had the cheese, had the tomatoes. There might have been some other things that were in there, but we could visibly see those different parts. Now, when we start talking about matter that's heterogeneous, the only type of matter that's going to fall into this particular category are heterogeneous mixtures. Now, the last thing I want us to take a look at here is a flow chart. And this flow chart gives us a breakdown of how matter can be classified. So we know that everything that we interact with that has mass and volume is matter. And so the question we want to ask ourselves is it made up of one type of substance or multiple types of substances? If the answer is it's made up of only one type of substance, then what we're going to do is we're going to follow this path over here to the pure substance category. Okay, if you answered that question of it's made up of two or more substances, then you're going to follow it over here to the mixture category. Now, when dealing with your pure substances, the next question you're going to want to ask yourself is, can this substance be broken down chemically? And so if the answer is no, it cannot be broken down chemically, then we know that we have an element. And so an element is going to be something that is found on the periodic table. Now, if the answer was yes, it can be broken down chemically, that means that you have a compound. And so from this image, what I want you to be able to take away is our compounds are made up of 2 or more elements. Now, so that's dealing with our side if there's only one type of substance present, and then if it's just a single atom or 2 or more atoms or 2 or more elements, we've got our compounds. But if it's 2 or more substances, we have a mixture. And within our mixtures, we're going to ask ourselves a very simple question. Does it look uniform throughout? Does it look the same? When you look at it, do you see different parts, or does it just look the same? If the answer is yes, it looks the same, then you have yourself a homogeneous mixture. If you answered that question of no, it's not uniform throughout, you can visibly see different parts, then you're going to have yourself a heterogeneous mixture. Now, in terms of what we interact with most on a day-to-day basis, we interact with mostly mixtures. And so things like the air we breathe, it's a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and other gases. Think about the oceans. If you've ever been to the beach, it's a mixture of water, salt, and other substances that are a part of the ocean. Now, this has been a good little introduction, hopefully, to what chemistry is, to matter, and the different types. What I would like to do in the next video is to dive into more about pure substances and mixtures. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to have a Google form posted in Google Classroom that I would like for you guys to fill out after watching this video so that it can give me some feedback on what you learned. And I look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to seeing you guys again real soon. Take care.